Trey Sellers, welcome to the Bitcoin Source. Can you start things off by introducing yourself to the audience?
Hey, Dadu. Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me on. Really happy to be here. So my name is Trey Sellers. I am VP of Client Solutions at Unchained Capital. Been a Bitcoiner for quite a while, since about 2014. Actually, when I first bought my first sats, didn't know what I was buying, of course, and that takes time for I think a lot of people, and so didn't buy enough. But getting in toward the latter half of 2019, I really started going down the rabbit hole, seeing what was the writing on the wall. And I came from the traditional financial world in banking. And at the time, I was at a major bank, and decided that if people around the bank were going to start having some questions about what Bitcoin is and why it's important, I should be the guy who answers those questions. And so I built a deck called Bitcoin for Bankers, really explained the need for the bank itself to understand what is and why it's important, and be in a position to answer questions from clients if those questions started coming. Right, one thing led to another, and the Bitcoin price went up. There's a lot of excitement. Those questions did start being asked. I was presenting around the company, and ended up on a crypto working group as the Bitcoin subject matter expert there. So really providing a voice that they probably otherwise would not have gotten in that group, as they were preparing a presentation for the board, which is, Bitcoin is the signal, crypto is the noise, NFTs, DeFi, Web3, all of this stuff is really not what the bank should be focused on. You really have to understand Bitcoin first before you even consider if there's any value over here, because that strategy should be built around Bitcoin. So going through all of that, really developing kind of a name for myself within the bank, and then started thinking, well, I should just see if there's something out there in terms of Bitcoin, and jobs that might be available. One thing led to another, and I found myself sitting across the table from Parker Lewis in Austin, Texas, and joined the team shortly after, in late 2021. So been here for about a year and a half, and what we do is help people to hold their own Bitcoin in a way that has no counterparty risk to us or anybody else, and in a way that has no single points of failure, right? So we're using multi-sig, which is some functionality that's built into Bitcoin. It's native to it. It's part of the protocol, and it allows you to protect Bitcoin behind multiple keys as opposed to a single key. And that puts you in the position where you don't have a single point of failure. You can keep keys in multiple locations. And then what we help our clients to do is guide them through that process of setting it up and doing something called collaborative custody, where we actually contribute one key out of a 3-key quorum, which puts us in a position to be able to help them if something happens to one of those 2 keys that they're controlling. If something happens to them, we're in a position to help move that Bitcoin down to their family in that inheritance planning scenario. And so, our mission is to help people hold their own keys and give them the guidance and support that they need along that journey, to be able to do so in the best possible way. And then above and beyond that, we provide some financial services that are built in that Bitcoin native way, financial services for Bitcoiners and what they need. So the ability to buy Bitcoin directly with us. We have a Bitcoin IRA where you can hold your own keys in that IRA. And then we also, loan dollars against Bitcoin as collateral. More to come in terms of those financial services and what we're able to offer, but that's really a general overview of what Unchained is and what we do for our clients.
Thank you for that introduction. I kind of was searching on Twitter and I put out a tweet and I said, like, who can I talk to that's in the self-custody business, the multi-sig business in Bitcoin, in the midst of this FTX implosion. A lot of people have been really gravitating towards companies and trying to secure their digital assets, their wealth and their Bitcoin. And I wanted to ask you about Casa, which recently kind of converted their business model to kind of custody Ethereum. How do you feel about companies that are pivoting from Bitcoin only to alternative coins for the sake of customer capital?
Yeah, well, I'll be charitable, right, when it comes to Casa, and just say that they've helped a lot of people hold their own Bitcoin, right? Like, as a security first principle, everybody should be holding their own keys, should not outsource that responsibility to anybody. And so the position that they've been in to help people do that, and to do that with multi-sig, has been great for Bitcoin, generally speaking. That said, I guess maybe I should just make the case for why Unchained is Bitcoin only and always will be, right? And so really where it starts is that Bitcoin solves the biggest problem that the world has on its hands right now, and that is that the money is broken, right? There's no better place for us to be focusing our time and our resources than to go to the root of the problems in the world, which is to help fix the money. And so, if we were to adopt something like Ethereum, which has a entirely different model in terms of how it's run and all that, we would be dividing our resources. We would be perhaps giving less attention to the Bitcoin security model that our clients are trusting us to be on top of at all times. And our clients don't want that, right? Like we build trust through that, with them over time. And by diluting our time and attention over there, we might be putting those clients' funds potentially at risk if we were to make a mistake and not be fully focused there. But then just coming back to the monetary principles, again, Bitcoin is the signal, crypto is noise. And if we're talking about a monetary revolution and the monetary system as it functions, well, money converges to one, right? So even if you could make the case that Ethereum and any of these other coins has some value, it doesn't change the fact, by the way, I don't believe that's true, but we could come back to that. It doesn't change the fact that they are competing with Bitcoin for that monetary function. And Bitcoin is the best money the world has ever seen, right? So it's inevitable that those other coins are going to lose over time, when it comes to this race to establish a new global money. And so again, just bringing it back, if you want to have the biggest impact on the world, you should focus your time and attention and energy on the thing that solves the biggest problem. That is money, that is Bitcoin, and that's why we are Bitcoin only, and we always will be.
The last boss in this Bitcoin race seems to be counterparty risk, self-custody, multi-sig custody. There's been so many Ponzi's, so many scams. You've seen things blow up, insolvencies. And I think it's really scared the crap out of a lot of people that, hold digital assets as a whole. I'm not a fan of Ethereum. I'm, purely Bitcoin only myself. But, you always kind of think about, what's more important? Is it the trust factor or the convenience? And I think that Casa is kind of juggling with that. And I'm proud to see that Unchained is kind of sticking to their guns and remaining Bitcoin only. Trey, so my next question for you is, why is it so important more than ever for people to have access to multi-sig accounts for their Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, just bringing it back, I said it once and I'll say it again, holding your own keys is the most important aspect of all of this. The first step that everybody should be thinking about when they first get into Bitcoin as a new person, it should be table stakes that they are going to be expected to hold their own keys. And so once we establish that, then the question is, okay, what is the right way to construct the security model such that you can hold a material amount of Bitcoin for the long term? Bitcoin is a multi-generational asset. It's meant to be held for a very long period of time and passed down in a multi-generational way. And so you need to be constructing your security around holding that asset in a way that is resilient to mistakes that you might make, that's resilient to people trying to take your Bitcoin. Everybody wants your Bitcoin. You need to be able to protect it from that. And that gives your heirs or your next of kin, your family, the ability to receive that Bitcoin if something does happen to you. We focus a lot on the inheritance side of things at Unchained. We just recently released an inheritance protocol that comes bundled with our standard onboarding process. And it lays out everything that our clients need to make sure that they're taking care of both the title aspect of inheritance planning as well as the key management and the possession side of Bitcoin so that they can safely and securely allow that Bitcoin to transfer to their family if something were to ever happen to them, right? And so, multi-sig solves a lot of problems that a lot of people worry about. They worry about a single point of failure. You don't have that with multi-sig, right? They worry about being able to pass down that Bitcoin. We just talked about why that's really important. But the other thing is that it makes multi-sig makes being able to move the asset without recreating a single point of failure possible. You can't do this with anything else, right? You can go from location A, where key A is stored, and sign a transaction, and leave that key there, and then go to location B, where key B is stored, sign that transaction there, and never bring those two together to recreate that single point of failure. That's novel, that's new, that's not anything that is able to be done with any other asset in the history of the world. And so, it's very much a really important tool for people to be able to, again, secure large amounts of Bitcoin for the long term. And then when you do it in this collaborative custody model where Unchained is holding a key alongside of you, you still retain that full control over the Bitcoin, but you're not out on an island. You're not trying to figure everything out on your own. You're not, you've got more resources there to help you so that you don't make mistakes as you're creating this multi-signature setup, as you are going forward and have issues with one of your keys. Maybe it's lost, maybe it's compromised. We're there to help give you guidance, help give you support to be able to recover from those scenarios. And then again, at the end of your time on this earth, when that Bitcoin needs to pass down, it's the most important asset that you should be thinking about. To be able to pass down to your kids, because it is so multi-generational. We're there and have the ability to help make that transition.
Not putting, all your eggs in one basket when it comes to your Bitcoin. And, I'm a millennial, my parents are boomers, and I kind of want you to kind of unpeel a little bit more of the inheritance planning side of Unchained Capital, because I'm curious about it. And when I say unpeel it, I mean, how do you guys kind of set that up? Do you base it off of an IRA? Do you base it off of wills? Do you base it off of estate planning? Like, how does that process work, Trey?
Yeah, so I mentioned our inheritance protocol. We do offer IRAs, and that has a little bit of a difference there in terms of how title is done from a legal standpoint. But that IRA is treated a little separately than some of the other assets that you might have. But being in that IRA kind of makes that beneficiary transfer very clean and easy. For the rest of the Bitcoin that's not in an IRA, you do need to have an estate plan in place. A lot of people will use a trust, or they will have established a will in concert with an estate attorney or advisor there. And that's all necessary from the legal side of things, right? You don't want to end up in a situation where you pass and your family is, there's any doubt as to where that Bitcoin should be passed down, and there could be somebody coming out of the woodwork to contest whatever your wishes would have been, and your family is left to try to figure that out, or it's left to the courts where you have very little control as to the outcome of being able to do that. So what this inheritance protocol enables is for our clients to have all of the necessary information that they need to talk to an estate attorney, to set up that estate plan, whether it be a will, whether it be a trust, or any other legal structure that would allow that title to be passed down in the appropriate way. And we give our clients some guidance as part of that on what questions to ask and what they should be seeking to get out of this, right? And then on the key management side, that's just as important. If you might have legal title to the Bitcoin, but if a key is not recoverable and all that, like Bitcoin doesn't care, right? Bitcoin doesn't know about our legal structures. And if they're not valid signatures on a transaction, that Bitcoin will not move. And so what we provide as part of the inheritance protocol on the key possession standpoint is an extra seed phrase card where they can copy one of their backup seed phrases onto that card. We provide a tamper evident bag where they can place that seed phrase in the tamper evident bag along with a letter that describes exactly what the process is for the person who is entrusted with protecting that seed phrase and carrying out that executor type role in the event of your death. It gives them those steps so that they know exactly what they need to do in the event that you're no longer there. And then you just hand that to them along with another letter that gives them some context of what's in that tamper evident bag. So what multi-sig allows, kind of goes back to the previous question, it allows for you to trust somebody else with one of the keys to your Bitcoin without doxing your balance to them. They don't know how much is in that vault that you've got secured, but it allows them to then cooperate with somebody like Unchained to help move the Bitcoin in the event that that inheritance planning scenario needs to take place. So again, like the advantages of multi-sig and this collaborative custody model continue to shine when it comes especially to the inheritance planning scenario there.
I learned some things just listening to you talk about it. And, I know that your wheelhouse is kind of dealing with clients on the side of Unchained Capital. And I kind of wanted to, ask you, like, how do you convert someone that is like a diehard self custody? I'm not giving my keys to anyone, and they just would rather, keep it on a steel plate in the privacy of their home. And you're trying to convert them into saying, like, hey, this multi-sig thing is an option that you can actually look into. If you have, large swaths of Bitcoin and there might be some vacillation there on whether you want to hold it securely privately or kind of trust a third party to kind of help ease your transition into, custodying Bitcoin just in case something happens to you, you get hit over your head, you don't remember your private keys. Like, what do you say to those clients that are really stiff and stuck on their ways?
Yeah, well, I think first by sharing like my own experience with this, which is that I learned Bitcoin in large part by listening to a lot of podcasts and reading a lot of different materials and being on Bitcoin Twitter and all of that kind of thing. But primarily, my learning came from actually working with the tools by running a node, by holding my own keys and using different hardware devices, and all of that, right? Hands-on experience. There's no substitute for it. And so I fully recognize the what it takes to really actually fully understand what's going on there and to feel very comfortable with that setup. I went as far as to set up my own multi-sig all on my own. I used Spectre Desktop connected to my own node, 3 keys that I was controlling, and I distributed them and all that. I put some sats in there. And then it just kind of hit me at one point that my wife is never going to be able to figure this out if something happens to me, right? It's just too complex. It's too complicated. And there's nobody there for her to turn to if I'm no longer around and able to handle this, right? And so the value proposition of Unchained really hit home for me, again, coming back to this inheritance planning scenario, right? So while you might feel very comfortable and very confident in the way that you're able to handle your Bitcoin, your family likely does not. And your children's children, maybe that knowledge has not passed down, or that over time that seed phrase becomes lost. Like, there's a lot that can happen there where a single point of failure in terms of just a seed plate buried in your backyard can create problems for being able to hold that Bitcoin over a very long period of time. And so again, I would implore you, think about the longevity of this asset. It is the best money the world has ever seen. It is perfect for multi-generational wealth. And you need to protect it with that in mind. And that means eliminating single points of failure and providing a setup that is very resilient to mistakes that you might make, that attackers might be trying to exploit, or that death might try to part you from your sats, right? Don't let death be the difference between your family being fully set up with this multi-generational wealth and being completely without Bitcoin. Only 21 million, you got to make sure those sats pass down.
Well, what I really love about what you said there, Trey, is that the transparency and the honesty is key. And when you're really looking at multi-sig or even just putting your money into retiring on Bitcoin, I think that Unchained makes it really easy. Even if you're a young person and you have a job, I'm sure that you can set up an IRA, have a percentage of your paycheck come out of, every week or every month, however you get paid, and just put a little bit of Bitcoin in there into an IRA. And before you know it, it accumulates. You have a good amount in there. And as you age, Unchained continues to protect that asset, give you multi-signature, capabilities, and then you're able to, God forbid something happens, like you said, you won't have your spouse or your family members be flummoxed on how do we get access to the keys, how do we withdraw the money, how do we, follow the rules that you might have set in place that you want people to do with the Bitcoin. So, Trey, I'm so happy that we had this conversation. I think that Unchained is an incredible company. I think that you're doing great work over there. To end things off, can you give people your social media and any future endeavors that you might want to talk about?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks again for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation. And so first and foremost, I can find me on Twitter at @TS_HODL. That's my handle there. Give me a shout. And then to go to Unchained, go to unchained.com. We offer complimentary consultations for anybody who is just curious about, what we do, how our process works, we can have a one-on-one conversation and get all of your questions answered there, and then help you get started, guiding you through that whole process there. We're dedicated to making sure that Bitcoiners have the best possible security for the Bitcoin that they hold, and so that they can pass it down there. And so, really enjoyed the conversation and appreciate you having
Trey,
me.
thank you for taking time to be on the Bitcoin Source. Have a good one.
All right, take care. Bye.
Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom.